Thank you, Paolo, and good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So like Paolo said, I'm going to give you a quick overview of the certificate in ESG investing. And like Paolo said, I've taken it myself, so I can share a little bit of my experience as a candidate. And then Olivier is going to give us an overview on where the certificate is going in the next couple of months. So Pedro, if you don't mind sharing the slide, that would be great. And then we can get started. Perfect. Great. And we can jump straight to the next slide. Thank you. So the certificate in ESG investing has been around for about 18 months now. So it was launched in September 2019 by CFA Society UK, so the UK member society. And really what it is a qualification to provide a solid foundation, a solid benchmark of knowledge around ESG integration, both knowledge and skills actually, for investment professionals. That was the aim, and that's what the program is designed to do. It's a self-study program, so something you can do, you know, alongside work in your own time, in your own way of studying, with no formal entry requirements, even though it's definitely recommended that someone who enrolls for the program already has a very solid understanding of the investment industry. And I think what sets it apart from a lot of the other qualifications that are already out there, and more of them are of course popping up every day, is that it's really by practitioners for practitioners. So the people who wrote the curriculum and the syllabus, they are all in the industry, they're all practitioners, and the syllabus gets updated and renewed every year. So it's always relevant for practitioners in terms of the content. So if you could go to this slide. So who was it designed for? When the program was designed, it was really, CFA Society UK really thought about two groups of people. On the one hand, those who are in investment roles and investment decision-making roles. So your portfolio managers, wealth managers, and analysts. And then on the other hand, those who are client-facing. So you see sales and distribution on here, relationship management, etc. There are, of course, other people taking this as well, especially within organizations where they are putting a lot of emphasis on that everyone has at least some ESG knowledge, irrespective of your role. But in a recent candidate survey, it did show that the majority of people who are taking it at the moment are indeed in one of those two buckets, either investment roles or client-facing. We go to the next slide. This is probably the most important one. What is actually in the syllabus? What does the certificate cover? And you can see here, it is split into 9 chapters, which really take you on a bit of a journey through the curriculum. So it starts off with an introduction to ESG. So that talks about common sustainability and ESG concepts, clears up a lot of the terminology, also looks at some of the ESG megatrends and how they are impacting our industry and companies. And then also some of the supranational ESG initiatives, things like the TCFD, SASB, the International Corporate Governance Network, etc. Then chapter 2 is the ESG market. So that looks at the size and the scope of the ESG investing universe, and also what the key drivers are that are playing in the favor of ESG at the moment. The next 3 chapters are about environmental factors, social factors, and governance factors, respectively. So they talk about some key concepts around environmental and social factors and how they impact investments, the relationships between business activities and environmental and social factors. What are the material impacts, so materiality, which we've heard about today already, definitely feeds in here. And then in the governance chapter specifically, it talks about different concepts around corporate governance codes, how they've been involved, and also what the role of the auditor is and the challenges that auditors face in performing their roles effectively. The next chapter is ESG Analysis, Valuation and Integration. So definitely one of the meatiest chapters in this curriculum. So this talks about what are the aims, the objectives, and the different approaches to ESG integration. It looks at different ways between qualitative and quantitative ESG analysis, at different databases and softwares that are out there, and also at ESG scoring and ESG screens and the providers for that and what methodologies they use. Then it goes into engagement and stewardship in the next chapter, chapter number 7. This looks at what is the purpose of engagement and stewardship, what different methods are there, how to actually achieve engagement in practice, how does it work, and also looking at different stewardship codes as well. If you could just go back to the previous slide, I'm almost done with that one. Thank you. Chapter number 8 is ESG Integrated Portfolio Construction and Management. Again, another pretty big chapter. So that looks at what impact do ESG factors have on strategic asset allocation. How can you evaluate different types of ESG investing in terms of risk, objectives, and investment consideration? How does it work using internal versus external ESG research? And then also looking at managing passive ESG portfolios. And then in the final chapter, this groups quite a lot of important issues together. So investment mandates, portfolio analytics, and client reporting. So this discusses how to look at ESG in terms of mandate construction, how to integrate ESG screens into mandate, and then of course quite a long section on performance analytics and reporting and the various challenges around that, as well as different client types and what ESG strategies one might select for each type of client. We can go to the next slide. These are just some of the practical points. So one good thing to know is that the certificate in ESG investing has been endorsed by the UN PRI, and CFA Society UK and CFA Institute continue to work very closely on that relationship. Study time is about 130 hours, although that's only the general guidance. So probably for a lot of people, especially those with quite extensive investment backgrounds and experience, will be able to pass this in a shorter amount of time. For someone like myself, who doesn't technically work, and I don't work in an investment role, I work more on the fringes of the industry, 130 hours were probably appropriate, but many people could get it done in 100 hours or maybe even less. Price-wise, it looks at £470 per person, and that or per registration, and that includes access to the official testing manual, which includes all the study resources, as well as one exam registration. And then the exam itself is what is multiple choice. It's just one exam, 100 questions, and they are either standalone multiple choice questions or item sets that have multiple questions attached to them. And then if we go to the final slide for my part, the exam experience, that's of course a big question in the current pandemic. So initially the exam was available just in the UK, and afterwards in a handful of European markets, including Spain, France, Switzerland, the Netherlands, etc., in Pearson VUE test centers. Many of you are probably familiar with those test centers already. But as of June 2020, so last year, the exam has also been made available online. So now anybody from all over the world can register and then study and then take the exam in an online proctored virtual environment. You just would have to fulfill a couple of requirements, having an appropriate workspace with a clean desk, a fast internet connection, etc. But this enables candidates much more easily to sit the exam, no matter where they're based, and of course safely, given the COVID situation as well. And that has really shown this online proctoring, making this available, has really pushed the registrations up as well. So at the moment, we are sitting at just over 5,000 registrations to date. So with that, Olivier, I will hand over to you.
Thanks, Julia. Thanks to everybody on the call for staying this long to listen to our bit. It's been a long meeting, so I won't take too much time. It's been a big 12 months at CFA Institute on ESG and sustainability overall. If you think of the three verticals we have as an organization, we're best known for our education and our exams, of course, and the flagship is still the CFA program. At all three levels of that program, for those of you who are charter holders who are taking the exams currently, there is now more ESG content than ever within the CFA program. But as a foundational program for financial analysis, we did think it was better to have a separate certificate for ESG, which are non-financial factors, or at least, as our colleagues from Amundi just highlighted, maybe transitioning to becoming material from a financial perspective. So that's why the certificate was developed, to have a dedicated educational module for ESG analysis. But you will see more and more ESG content within the CFA program, as I said, as it becomes more and more mainstream. The two other verticals of the organization are standards and research. Many of you may be familiar with our most famous standard for performance calculations, the GIPS standard, which has been in various iterations of development for over 30 years. There is a new GIPS version that came out last year. And also last year, we issued a consultation on a product disclosure standard for ESG. So that when people like the folks at Amundi tell you that there's a product that meets an ESG criteria, we believe there should be a common standard for analyzing what that claim actually represents. And that claim should be consistent across geographies and regulatory environments. So we are aiming with this standard not to be prescriptive the way certainly the EU approach has been with SFRD, for example, but more descriptive the way we've been with performance over the years, where we try to encourage people with our ethical best practice lens at CFA Institute to represent consistently what it is they do when they claim that they have ESG credentials, and to be able to be willing to be audited on that claim by a third party. And then finally, we have a lot of initiatives in research. Julie and I worked a lot on those, and you may have heard from us over the last year about those initiatives. We issued 3 different reports on sustainability and ESG themes in 2020, with more to come in 2021. In 2020, we issued a meta study of all the existing ESG academic literature, working with Professor Pedro Matos of the University of Virginia. That was issued by the Research Foundation, which is the independent publishing arm of the CFA Institute. And then the Future of Finance team, which is sort of the think tank inside at CFA Institute, issued 2 different reports, one in September, one in December. In September, it was a series of case studies analyzing how fund managers globally are actually implementing climate science into their investment process. And in December of last year, we issued a megatrend report called The Future of Sustainability in Investment Management that revealed, based on a lot of the surveys we do of our members, just how mainstream ESG has become. The quickest stat I can quote there is that now, when we look at our membership, which is nearly 200,000 members around the world, 85% of the respondents claim that they now take ESG considerations into their investment process. That's up from less than 75% just 3 years ago. So the trend is clear. And actually, I was reminded during the Amundi presentation that I'm old enough to remember when a company like Vestas Wind Systems was in financial distress and close to bankruptcy, I think probably twice in the last 20 years. And we now hear from mainstream fund managers like Amundi just how important that company has become to them in their portfolios. That shows you how strong the megatrend is in ESG and as a corollary in the real economy in sectors like renewable energy. So there's a lot more to come in 2021. On the certificate that you just heard about from Julia, there will be a globalization effort, rolling out the availability of the certificate to more and more countries. Probably important for people in Europe to know, we're seeing the strongest demand in North America across our Canadian and US societies so far, which shows you that ESG truly is becoming a global phenomenon. It's probably fair to say that America was at best a fast follower on ESG for a long time, and that seems to be changing very quickly. And we're also going to be issuing more research reports. We will have another climate change report that we're working on, more case studies from fund managers who are willing to explain to the world how they integrate climate science in the investment process. And we'll be finalizing the consultation I just told you about on the product standard and will actually be issuing it in the fourth quarter of this year for industry participation, for industry to take up the standard as a sign of best practice. So lots more to come from CFA on ESG. We hope this was a helpful overview. And if you have any more time and you want to ask any questions, fire away.
Olivier, one question from me. Considering the exam is online, a person can do it at any date the candidate chooses, or there are set dates for the exam?
There are some strict guidelines. Julia, do you want to go over those?
Sure. So for the ESG certificate, it is pretty much available at any point. So a candidate does have to book an exam slot, but there are exam slots available 24/7, Monday to Saturday. So it really is very, very flexible in the online setting. Of course, if you are if you go for a test center experience, if you are in a market where that's available and where it's allowed under local COVID regulations, then it depends a little bit on what availability that test center has, but it should still be very flexible.
Okay, and the study materials, they are provided when a person enrolls to be a candidate?
Exactly, okay. Yes. So they get provided, it's online. So the whole curriculum, including end of chapter review questions and one practice exam, are all done on the candidate profile. But one can also order a hard copy version of the curriculum. If you are like me and you prefer actual physical books, then you can order that as well.
And how long takes the exam?
The exam is 100 minutes.
100 questions for 100 minutes.
Exactly. So it's in terms of timing, it's easy. It's very manageable. So okay. It's not one of those where you are desperately trying to fit in the questions into the time. The time frame is good.
Okay. One question about this presentation we can share with everyone that was attending, right?
Yes. Okay. And Paulo, I should add a couple of stats on the certificate in ESG investing. Mm. So far, we have, as you said to you, we have 5,000 registrations for it. It was only launched about 18 months ago, and only in the UK at that time, so it's growing quite fast. We are averaging about 150 new registrations a week right now. The average age of the people who've taken it so far is 44, which I think is interesting and shows the CFA Institute, as you probably know, is a big believer in continuous education. It shows that ESG is definitely a topic that fits there. This is not just an early stage qualification from an age demographic perspective. And then in terms of the feedback we're getting, Julie and I just did a session at Vanguard yesterday. We've done a few with AXA Investment Management recently. A lot of people inside firms are taking this certificate that are not for fund managers or client-facing professionals. They're legal professionals, they're compliance professionals, they're also HR professionals. And the feedback we're getting is that ESG is such a strategic initiative in a lot of firms that for a lot of people in middle to back office roles sometimes, it's become very important to actually be able to be conversant in ESG and to be at the table with enough knowledge with their colleagues that they need a qualification. So it's not something that we would typically see in the CFA program. A CFA program is very much aimed at financial professionals, as all of you know, but this particular qualification seems to have a broader reach, at least for now.
Okay. Well, we have an additional question, which is if it is a single year course, or it's just a single, it's just one exam. So I would say
yes, it is just one exam, and it is true from the day you register, you have 1 year. So your registration is valid for 1 year, but that should be plenty of time to study.
Sure. And any percentage of CFAs and non-CFAs taking the exam nowadays? Do you have that number?
So I believe, Olivier, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe so far the majority of people taking it are actually non-charter holders. And as Olivier said, the audience is a lot wider actually than initially anticipated. So definitely a lot of non-charter holders or non-CFA program candidates who are taking it.
Yeah, and I think I should just be very clear. So I'm a charter holder, and I've worked in ESG for a long time as well. And I looked at the curriculum when it came out, and I worked with the UK Society on it. The honest assessment I would give you all is that you can pass the CFA ESG certificate without an advanced degree in finance, whether it's the charter or another degree. It is definitely got investment content. It's aimed at investment professionals ultimately. But the amount of analysis, and if all of you who took the CFA exams or are taking it will know, the amount of calculations you need to do, the amount of equations you need to remember, it's nothing to do with the CFA program. It's much more foundational. So that is probably why we are seeing cohorts of employees inside firms take this certificate, because it is not as demanding from a financial analysis point of view as the mainstream CFA program.
Okay. And how about the percentage of successful candidates? Do you have any statistics nowadays?
It's over 60% so far, Paolo.
Okay. Okay. I believe. Thank you very much for your time. And it's good to know that that it's growing as fast as we expected, and also we have one more question. Sorry, we have one which is, I'm interested in an unbiased opinion as much as possible but do you believe that the SESGA certification is more suitable to anyone who wishes to have a financial focused career over the finance risk management charter from GAR?
I think so. SESGA is much closer to what the CFA program tries to do, and it's more of a peer. FRM is not something I've taken, but I have colleagues who have. It's very much for risk professionals and who intend to stay in the risk function through time, from a career perspective. So perhaps the way I would summarize it is the FRM designation. It's a very well recognized one, but it's less portable in terms of career optionality than the SESGA or CFA program.
Yeah, agreed. There are quite a lot of CFA charter holders who take the FRM certification as a top up, but it's usually those who work in relevant roles already and are intending, like Olivier said, intending to stay in that space in their career.
Perfect. Julia and Olivia, thank you very much for your time and
thank you
for giving us this this overview. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.